2.6 million, 1.9 million, 1.3 million, 1.7 million. You might be wondering what these numbers are. Well, I'm going to tell you that these are the numbers of recently priced homes on realtor.com that were just recently sold. With skyrocketing prices like these, it's only bound for people to leave the area and live somewhere where it's cheaper. Growing up, I think it's safe to say that the places we lived in have been changing and constantly changing, with new places being built, new places being remodeled, or just being demolished altogether. We have been researching the topic of housing, and for some of us have been looking into getting an apartment in the near future. With the growing population, we believe you should all support better housing or just more affordable housing and see how it is beneficial to society as a whole. See how more housing is beneficial, we will be looking at the living costs, the reforming of zoning laws, and how creating more housing is helps out the community in many ways you probably won't be able to see.
The price of a house is increasing nationwide, and this increase is also making the price of rent increase as well. And how has the price increased? Well, according to Statista.com, the national average house price has increased by 15.7% nationwide. And for us Californians, that is our average is slightly higher than the national average, as California saw a 22.3% increase in the average family home. This increase of both rent and housing is due to a myriad of reasons, and one of those main reasons is that corporations or second-time home buyers are scooping up these houses first, and this leaves the first-time home buyers in the dust as they are unable to buy their first homes. With houses being purchased at a fast rate, the supply of the houses is unable to meet the overall demand, and simple economics dictate that when the supply doesn't meet up with the demand, the price goes up, and that is the case for the houses. This stark increase in the housing market is the main driving force for the increase of rent. And to top this all off, the increase of inflation has also dramatically affected the increase of the housing price, as it contributes heavily to the rise of prices as the cost of building the houses increase, which ultimately reflects on the price of the homes. With the demand so high and little supply, the price of both rent and housing has increased substantially. And one of the many hindrances of the supply or construction of these homes are that the various laws or codes limit these contractors to build various types of housing. And that's why laws like zoning laws should be changed, as it is preventing or limiting houses to be built. These government restrictions are known as zoning. And what these zoning laws do is that it limits the amount of houses available, as these laws are harsh for builders and contractors to follow. And many things in these laws limit the height restriction, or it establishes an arbitrary standard or requirement, which ultimately makes it hard to build more housing, as there are tight rules which have to be followed. And according to the state housing departments, the state needs to build 180,000 new houses per year in order to meet up with the demand. And these zoning laws are hindering that from happening. Suburban housing takes a lot of space and it's very big horizontally, and instead we should focus on building more vertically. And because of the tight building rules, we are unable to build more vertical houses, which is also better for the environment, as the houses won't take up as much space. And as you can see by the picture, one of these lots over here can at least take up a skyscraper, which is more beneficial, as it will house more people. These suburban houses take a lot of space, and that is environmentally unfriendly. And this is all due to the various zoning laws that we have made. And what can be done about this current situation? Well, to combat the increase of the house prices caused by the zoning laws, we'll be talking about the solution, and for that, I'll pass it on to my team member.
The Joker once said, "It's simple. We kill the Batman." Resolving the housing crisis isn't something that's really complicated, like colonizing Mars, where we have to we just get rid of zoning restrictions. And the first point I want to address is that existing reforms are not good enough. Now you might think, actually, last year, the state of California passed legislation that reformed single-family zoning. This was passed by the Governor Gavin Newsom, and this was supposed to, transform the housing market. The legislation made it illegal for local counties in California and cities in California to make restrict an area to only allow single-family housing, which means in this plot of land, if you build housing, each building can only house one, family unit. You can't build duplexes. And so this bill was called SB 9 or Senate Bill 9, and it made it illegal for zoning laws to only permit single-family housing. But this is not enough. David Garcia, director at the Turner Center for Housing Innovation at UC Berkeley, said that this legislation will not move the needle. It only affects 1 out of every 20 parcels of housing due to rent protection and historic district preservation laws. And duplexes aren't worth very much in terms of investments for developers. And only 1.5% of the existing housing stock are profitable for developers to transform, the single-family units into duplexes. And 1.5% means only about 110,000 units of new housing a year, which is not that much. The California Department of Housing said that right now we need 2.5 million homes by 2030 in order to resolve the housing crisis in California. Megan Kirkby, the Deputy Director of the California Department of Housing, said that California's housing crisis is half a century in the making, and it's not something that can be just addressed by a cosmetic legislation where we build a lot of duplexes. So single-family zoning removal is not enough to increase our supply of housing, and what we need to do is to remove height restrictions and minimal lot sizes at the state level so that we can build more housing. Paul Bordeaux, who's a law professor at Stetson University, said that American suburbs are the least dense in the world because of our minimal lot size laws. It's even less dense than Western Europe. And minimal lot size laws dictate that you need a certain minimum amount of land to even build 1 unit of housing. There are also height limits in cities, counties, at the municipal level. Almost all cities, if not all cities, have some sort of laws on height restrictions on how tall buildings can be in residential areas. And we can radically reform those laws so that even if we don't want all of our cities to turn into the densest part of Hong Kong, the status quo is unacceptable. This is a map of zoning in San Francisco, previous to SB 9, where all the places in red, you could only build single-family unit homes. You could not build an apartment. You could not build anything taller than 2 stories. And legislators are aware of the need for the reform on height restrictions. In April of 2018, there was a bill, SB 827, which failed to pass, but the bill increased the minimum height cap on buildings in California so that if a building is within a quarter of a mile of a major transit corridor, the minimum height restriction that you can have is 85 feet or 6 stories, which means that if you are a city government, you can't make developers build lower than 6 stories at a maximum. And if a building is within half a mile of a major transit stop, then the minimum height would be 55 feet or 4 stories. So you can't make a cap that's lower than 4 stories. And we need more than just duplexes. We need high-rise apartment buildings in order to combat the current housing shortage. And a change in zoning laws can benefit everyone, young and old. And lots of people like the know my backyard crowd, have worries, but those worries are overstated.
So Yes in My Backyard is an organization that fights for more houses, better public transportation, and a relaxation of zoning laws. There are many people that are against Yes in My Backyard, even though it brings a lot of benefits, but it also brings its fair share of concern. The people that are mainly against Yes in My Backyard include the baby boomer generation. Specifically, baby boomers believe that with a lot more housing, it will change the character of their communities, and it would also change the values, and it would change the aesthetic. The baby boomer generation is a generation that shows the most resistance to Yes in My Backyard. They're actually, most of them are part of No in My Backyard. So they're fine with more housing, but they don't want it in their backyard, put it somewhere else. Most of the boomers also own most of the homes here. And they purchased these homes many years ago. So you can understand why they don't want to see the communities change after they've been so used to seeing them like this for so long. But each generation is different. We all have different views from the next. So their concerns are valid. Additionally, many boomers worry that with more housing, their initial investment on their homes will decrease because with the more like apartment homes, it will actually decrease the initial investments of regular single-family homes. Dr. Max Holleran, a professor from the University of Melbourne in Australia, stated that boomers saw larger buildings as out of character, and they were worried that the new residents wouldn't share the same value with the original community, and that they wouldn't be as strict with the upkeep of their properties. Holleran also stated that the demand for more houses has been greeted with trepidation. They worry that a rapid construction of a lot of homes will lower the community's prices and destroy the whole character. Even though there are many concerns about what more housing will do, we believe that the pros outweigh the cons. An example of a pro is not only will housing prices go down, but it's also very environmentally friendly. In an article from Forbes.com titled, "What is a YIMBY?" or Yes in My Backyard person, Scott Breyer stated that some YIMBYs are motivated by environmental factors of density. They want to protect agricultural and natural lands. Suburbs are very big. They keep reaching out outside of the cities, going into more wildlife and more natural land, which is not environmentally friendly for the earth. Even the asphalt alone retains a lot of heat. Public transportation will also become a more viable option if we were all denser together. With dense cities like maybe New York or San Francisco, less people are inclined to own a car because all the traffic, and it's a little bit harder to navigate. So we will increase public transportation, which will also reduce emissions. An increase in housing may also increase job opportunities. Holleran also stated that there is compelling data that asserts urban housing markets bestow access to well-paying jobs that are increasingly unavailable in non-urban or declining cities. For example, a place like Kansas maybe won't have all the tech jobs here. So a lot of people will want to move to the Silicon Valley, but everything's too expensive, or there might just not be enough houses to be able to do so. And how will this affect us? Well, most of us are probably around 18, 19, 20, and soon we're going to need to find our own apartments, our own houses. If you want to live in the Bay Area, you might be forced to live with your parents for much longer than anticipated. Lastly, gentrification is also addressed with more houses. Holleran also stated that ideally new housing helps to address urban inequality by stemming gentrification through providing alternate housing markets.
To recollect your minds, with the competitiveness of the housing market and the shortage of the supply, the effect that legislative reform has on the zoning laws, and the ways that building more housing is more effective, and how the stumps that the opposition might have, more housing is beneficial. With that in mind, there are some things that you can do to help support these housing loans. If you want to go the extra mile, become a politician, why not? But we all know most of us probably won't do that, so just vote for the politicians who support these policies already. Or you could also just tell your friends and family about how beneficial how building more housing helps the community, and hopefully that they also spread the word. Some things that I have done, or will do in the future, is I've told people around me about why building more housing is very helpful for us, how we can save money, how the housing market is. Some of the things I have done and will do is I have informed people close to me about the politicians who support more housing, or better housing that is, vote for them, or continue to spread information to those around me. In conclusion, it doesn't take much to support better housing options, especially when your impact can help out your community to thrive better. Thank you for listening.